I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristen Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried, will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Hi, everyone. Kristen here. I am back with Christine Louis de Cannonville. Hi, Christine.
Hi there.
We are doing our fourth episode from her book, The Ghost in the Machine, Unmasking the Hidden Psychology of Narcissistic Abuse. And this particular one is on intermittent reinforcement. It's chapter 17. And I'm just going to read the summary of the chapter, and then we'll get into it with Christine. So here we go. Intermittent reinforcement, the cruel dance that keeps victims trapped in the abuser's unpredictable cycle. It examines how narcissists use intermittent reinforcement as a manipulation tactic to maintain control over their victims. This strategy involves alternating between periods of affection and emotional abuse, creating a cycle that keeps victims hopeful for the return of the positive behavior. The chapter explains how these sporadic rewards trigger dopamine release in the brain, leading to an addictive bond where victims cling to the hope of regaining the initial love that they experienced during the idealization phase. By understanding this cruel dynamic, readers can recognize the psychological traps set by narcissists and learn to break free from the cycle of abuse, empowering them to reclaim their autonomy. Well, I know all about that one, Christine. I think I've sent you many emails on that.
Yes, yeah. Unfortunately, victims do know it, but they may not realize that they know it until we talk about it.
Yeah, that's the thing is you're so that's part of, I mean, we've talked in other episodes of discussions we've had about, some of them like to make sure that you aren't getting enough sleep. Making sure that you're not eating properly so that you're easier to manipulate, and that makes it harder to then get into, the truth about what's going on.
Yeah. What you're talking about is coercive control, all of the tactics that they use to wear you down. But I thought that this was an important one because intermittent reinforcement is actually one of the narcissist cycles of abuse, and it's not always spoken about. I speak in the book of 3 cycles. This is one of the cycles. So that's why I thought it would be a good one for us to speak about today.
When does it usually start, this piece? I mean, to me, when I read about it and what my experience is it starts right in the beginning during the love bombing stage, because they're studying you in order to get this down pat. That's the special recipe for how they're going to use this on you. Am I correct in that?
Well, usually in the beginning, when
Okay.
you can do nothing wrong, and they're love bombing you. And they're enjoying that too. Don't forget, they're enjoying because you're giving everything to them as well, all your attention as well. And they're really enjoying that phase. And so they lavish you with gifts and praise and attention. However, as the relation, when they know that they have you bonded to them, that's when they're likely then to start little bit. It'll come in a little bit at a time, but it'll be so little that you won't really notice what's going on. Like they'll start to criticize you a little and things like that, or suddenly go a bit cold on you, and they're pulling away from you. But you're wondering, is it your imagination, or maybe I'm just imagining it, and what else? But definitely when you go into the devaluing phase in the second stage, the devaluing stage can happen at any time, of course. I noticed with a lot of my clients when I researched with them, when did you notice the change in the relationship? The majority was around the 4-month period. That's for them. Now, it can happen sooner than that, or it can happen a lot later than that. But the majority of the people I have worked with, by the time it was about 4 months into the relationship. And the reason I think for that is the narcissist can't keep the mask up, because that love bombing stage, that lovely phase, it's not their true self at all. So they're not able to keep up the pretense too long, generally speaking.
I remember going through being love bombed, and this person would call me every morning, would talk to me all night long, keeping me awake, obviously, and I was too. But and then call me first thing in the morning to wake me up. And I remember that for the first few months, it was the thing I looked forward to was their phone call.
Yeah,
Because I was so happy and just good morning. And I
yeah,
remember the first morning about 4 months in where I called or he called me and I was like, good morning. Oh my God. And he went, well, what's going on with you this morning? Why are you so happy? It was so different from every
yeah. It's a jolt.
it's a jolt.
Yeah,
And I know now that was a test to see what level of that he needed to start at. He needed to go in softer with it. He went too far.
okay.
So it's interesting when you catch that. And later when they do that and you know what it is a whole other level of messing with your head. But in the beginning, when I didn't know what that was, yeah, it's just like, oh, did I say something? I mean, I spent days trying to figure out what did I say? What did I do?
Yeah. And what's interesting is, what's important to know is that this is intermittent behavior. It's not something that once they turn, it's constant, that they're horrible. They're not. The way it works, it is because it's unpredictable. You don't know which person you're going to get as time goes on. You don't know whether you're going to get the lovely Dr. Jekyll or the horrible Mr. Hyde. You don't know. And that keeps the victim um, nervous and anxious and tiptoeing, walking on eggshells around them. And that's a terrible way for anybody to be in their day.
It makes me think of what it's like to live with an alcoholic, having to be completely, aware all the time of where their emotional state is so you know how your day is going to go that day.
Yeah. Well, of course, I would see that a lot of alcoholics would be narcissistic. Things about them, how much money they have in their pocket to spend on their drink, their next fix. You know, Ireland would be a country that would have a lot of alcoholics, and in our, certainly in our past and in our present, and mothers left with little or very small money to run the home.
Right.
But still, the alcoholic will have his back pocket money when children might need new school books or might need a new uniform for going back to school. They're not producing more money because they're holding on to the money and drinking. So I would see a lot of narcissists, alcoholics.
And a lot of people that without the alcohol, maybe they're not quite that way. And then others where, oh no, they're that way through and through.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
The dopamine part, that part that
Mhm.
really bonds you to that person, that is what we're witnessing happen in so many places all over the world where people just can't seem to break free from it. So what does that say in terms of the psychology of the victim in that mode where 100,000 people could tell them, here's all the evidence, this is what's happening, and they just don't want to see it. What is that with the victim, not so much the narcissist?
The victim is living on tenterhooks. They don't know what they're going to get from moment to moment or day to day. They don't know what they're going to get. But when they get that little bit of affection, when they get the positive reinforcement from their partner, they get this dopamine hit. And it's like manna from heaven. They live waiting for that hit. So, in a way, they're like drug addicts. They're waiting for their fix from their partner. That kindness, that connection, that attention, that kind word. And they become like gamblers. The gambler goes into the fruit machine and puts their money in and they pull the lever and they're waiting. They're expecting not to win really, but they're hoping that they will. And of course they don't win anything. They put another coin in and off they go again. And that's what it's like for the victim. They constantly keep trying to feed the right behavior to their partner in the hopes of getting that attention, that kindness, that warmth, that connection that they're starving for. And every so often they get it. And woohoo, I won the jackpot. But they never get enough that totally satisfies them. They only get just enough.
Sounds like a heroin
So
addiction, that it's the
it
first high
absolutely
is
is.
the first high is that best high, and then you spend the rest of your time trying to reach that first high.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what it's like for the victim. And of course, what that does, it makes them addicted to their partner or the narcissist. It doesn't have to be a partner, by the way. Could be a parent, could be a friend, could be somebody in the workplace. It causes an addiction towards that person. You're looking for that high. If you're not looking for that high, you're looking to stay safe. So you're looking for something all the time around them. And that causes and creates a dependence, especially if it's your partner.
Right? Bring sex and partnership and children and all of those things into the equation. And it's there's
Mhm.
so many obstacles to getting away from this person
Yeah.
because they've
And
infected every area of your life.
yeah. And it's very hard to work out what it is. When you're trying to mind yourself, you're trying to guard yourself, you're living in hope, you haven't really got the awareness to be able to work out, hang on, what's happening here? And don't forget, it's subtle. It can be subtle. It's not always subtle, but they're giving it to you in drips. It's like drips of poison. It's not enough to kill you. Because if they were to do it all of the time, sure, you'd run away from them. You'd get away from them if they were doing it all of the time. But they're not doing it all of the time. It's little drips of poison that they're giving you. And then they'll give you the hit that you're looking for. And then you feel that connection once again. You live in hope. You think, well, maybe we have, maybe things are changing. You know, maybe we can make it. And that cycle of abuse keeps going on and on. I remember I was working with a girl as an example, and we call her Jane. Of course, it's not her real name because protecting confidentiality. But Jane came in one day and well, how's it been this week? And she took us and she puts her hands in her head. And I thought, okay, what happened? So she went on to tell me her husband, who was a businessman, wanted to invite his boss and a few colleagues home to dinner. And she was agreeable, um, and wanted to make it a nice occasion. And so she did. She got out the linen and the best crystals and the candles and planned a lovely menu. And they came. And at some point in the evening, the husband clinked his glass to get everybody's attention at the table. And he said, I just want to take a moment to thank my beautiful wife for such a wonderful, wonderful evening. The food was amazing. Everything was great. And I just want to thank her. Of course, everybody said, oh, yes, yes. And everybody clapped and said she was lovely. And in that moment, and she was telling me, she said, oh my God, she said, it would, so this was where he was giving her, connecting with her, giving her the attention. And she was overjoyed. And at some point, anyway, a little after that, she was making a great effort to speak to everybody at the table and be the perfect hostess. And she was talking to the boss. And after they were having a great conversation about all sorts of things, interests, books they read, things like that. And the boss turned around to her partner and said, you never told me you had such an interesting and beautiful wife. You're a very lucky man. And of course, he said, yes, yes, and all the rest of it. So anyway, the dinner finished and they waved everybody off at the door, and she was feeling absolutely terrific. Walked into the kitchen and he walked in behind her, and all of a sudden he blew up. He said, how dare you? How dare you embarrass me like that? She's totally confused. What's just happened? Say, what did I do? So she goes into what the victims usually go into, plumosing and saying, what are you talking about? What did I do? Tell me, please tell me. And he said, you know, don't give me that, you know. And she said, I don't know. And now he actually wasn't a violent man in the sense of hitting her, but he was violent with his body movements and his aggression. He was very aggressive in his movements and banging the table. And with that, he totally disconnected from her, completely and utterly, left her. So she stayed down, cleaned up, and next day gave her the cold. For several days, he didn't talk to her, gave her the cold treatment. And she was desperate and she wanted to talk about it, but she was frightened to talk about it. And then eventually he comes in from work she's prepared, the food is cooking, and he comes in and says, oh, the food smells delicious. What have we got for dinner? As if nothing has happened in the last few days. And once again, she's delighted to get, she's got Dr. Jackal back again, being nice to her. And she's making sure to give him plenty on his plate and make sure he's fine. And she just said, I think I'm going crazy. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. And that, of course, was my entry into teaching her about intermittent reinforcement and what was happening. And of course, why do narcissists do it? Well, I can tell you the reason they do it is it changes the power differential between them as a couple. They get the power. How he looks at her is whether he has the power or not. What he says to her depends whether he has the power or not. So it's a very, very strong position to be in. So this is why I think it's really important. Most therapists should be able to work with abuse. They should be. Their training should give them all that's needed, really. But they really do need to understand narcissistic behavior so that they're able to then explain to that person what is happening in the relationship. Because the reason that this intermittent reinforcement works is because people don't understand it. They don't see it. But once you explain it to people, they start to, okay. And of course, then when I'm working with people, I would suggest, look, get yourself a journal, write down when things happen. See if there's a pattern to it. There may or may not be a pattern, but it's useful to see, does it happen after he's had a drink? Does it happen when he's tired, when he comes in for work? Or is there a pattern at all to it? Can it just happen involuntarily at any time? And not to feed into it. See it for what it is. Something. So she asked me, well, what happened? I said, well, I don't know. I wasn't there to see what happened, but there are a few things from what you've told me that perhaps I can see might have caused it. And I said, remember that time when he clinked his glass and he told everybody how wonderful you were? So she said, yeah. I said, what do you think he was doing? So she said, well, I thought he was appreciating me and wanted to share that. And I'm just wondering, could you see, before I tell you what I saw, could you see why he might do that?
Yeah, I mean, when that's happened to me, I've felt like, oh, I was being set up in some way or another. Yeah, I mean that's how I would look at it, but you go ahead.
Okay, no, well, true. It could be that he's setting her up for a fall. It could be. It doesn't sound like he was on that particular night.
Okay.
Um, but what I saw in it was that that wasn't really about her at all.
Right. Yes,
That
that.
was all about him. Listen, guys, look at me. Look at the great wife I have. Does your wife do that? So it was about him. It looked like he was giving her the attention, but actually he was getting attention out of it. And of course they applauded, and they were applauding what a great husband he was in return. So that there was reward in that. But what I think might have happened was when the boss turned round to him and said, you never told me that you had such an interesting and intelligent wife. I mean, that's a compliment to him. However, because I don't know him and you don't know him, he might actually have felt that his wife was more intelligent than him. Maybe she has higher education than him, who knows? Maybe he has a hang up about her being more intelligent than him. And maybe he was wounded by that comment. Maybe he took it that she was showing him up how intelligent she was, as if they could see that he wasn't that intelligent himself or that knowledgeable. So I think probably that touched a nerve in him somewhere. And of course, that wasn't what she was trying to do at all. But when I actually explored that with her, um, she actually was able to confirm that actually she had a degree and he hadn't. However, he was a very successful. She didn't see that as any less in him. She thought that he was a very good provider, very good earner. He had a very good position in work. But we're not talking about how she felt. We're talking about how did he feel? He felt less than her. And that would be one of the reasons that he probably punished her that night. And he spoiled the night and he spoiled the next 2 or 3 days for her as well. And he knew it.
And got excited about it, got off on watching her suffer.
And she would have got the high chemical that gave her the high when he praised her at the table, and she loved that moment. But she would have also had 3 days of worry, of distress, wondering how he was going to come in that evening. Would it kick off again? And she was too afraid to bring it up. So she would have been getting worn down with the worry and the anxiety of that. And is it any wonder that victims become so confused and so muddled because they don't know what they're dealing with?
And it slowly wears you down. I mean, it has with me where, in the beginning, I'm jumping through hoops to look my best, be on my sharpest, in my sharpest mind for conversations, all these things. And slowly I'm being eroded. I'm in a boat with someone and I think I'm rowing this boat together, but they're in the back drilling a hole in the boat that we're in together.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, as I'm going through this, I'm wondering, I'm slowly becoming that which they say they hate because I don't have the energy to maintain. Also don't have energy to maintain the pedestal that they put me on in the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm
And
not
I've seen,
slowly eroding their esteem. They do that to themselves, but they are slowly eroding
hmm.
mine.
No, you're adding to their esteem because you're working harder and harder to keep up with them. And they're getting their narcissistic supply. That's what fuels them. So they take pleasure when they see you being pleased with them, but they also take pleasure when they see you unhappy. And that's probably another thing why he might have, that's another thing that he might have done as well. When he saw her happy that night, they don't like to see you happy. They ruin nearly every occasion. They'll ruin birthdays, Christmas. They ruin the occasions because they don't want you to be happy. And he probably saw that at that table she was happy, and everybody was enjoying her company, and she was enjoying all of their company, and that probably grated on him as well. And he wanted to ruin that. But you imagine now if you are a child and you're growing up with that. Um, I know that I had a male, I was working with a male, and his mother was a narcissist. And we were looking at, his childhood. He came in about a relationship problem, but we were looking at his childhood. And he was saying that his mother was constantly putting him down, telling him he'd amount to nothing. He'd never, with his brains, he'd never, don't expect too much, etc., etc. And then on the odd occasion, she'd tell him how wonderful he was. And in that moment, he'd forgive her for everything. In that moment, he was so hungry and desperate for those crumbs of affection, that he'd hang on to those and live in the hope of the next time he'd get the next one. They didn't come very often, but he very much made the most of them when they did come. But it's no wonder he came into me with a relationship problem, because guess who he chose as a partner? Somebody exactly like his mother, someone who put him down. And he was a gentle soul, very gentle soul. And he had amounted to enough. He had. He was a good provider. He brought his wage packet home and handed it up and waited to be given some pocket money out of it. But he went towards what he understood, what he knew. And that's what we do. Unfortunately, that's what we do.
It's a very different space for the victim when you have this awareness.
Yes.
And it's not like all of a sudden you just are aware of everything. It's to me it felt like I was walking next to a fence that had slats, wooden slats. And as I talk to people like you, I could see more and more of the picture between the slats onto what actually was going on the other side of that fence.
Yeah.
So I looked at that like, oh, okay, I'm seeing more real. I'm seeing this relationship more clearly. And those slats get easier and easier and maybe wider and wider so that you see more. But then begins a different phase for
Mhm.
you of you're already in war with yourself in terms of, wait, am I interpreting that? What's happening? What did I say? What did I do? But then you get this knowledge and you start seeing that it's them. And there's a period of terror at, oh my gosh, I am living with Dr. Hyde. I mean,
Mhm.
there comes that realization of, and you get, and you're in that terror, but you're also seeing what's happening. Tell me about that stage and why that's so critical for a victim, where you're living in the reality of you see what's going on, but you have to continue to, you're still in the relationship.
It doesn't come that quickly for most people. I wish it did.
Yeah,
Um, in the therapy room, I go at their pace. Some people, somebody like you who've actually worked some of it out, I can go much quicker.
right.
I have to go gentler with people because it comes as quite a shock when you're telling them that they're in love with an illusion, that this person that they think that they're in love with is not who they think they are at all. And so it's crushing. So I have to go at the pace of the individual in front of me. Um, but I start opening it up. In the beginning, I will tell them, "No, you don't have to do anything with this information right now. Let's just sit with it. I want you to observe what's going on. Bring it back into me, and together we'll unpack it. And that's the way I work. So we're then unpacking. So I also tell them, don't mention the word narcissism to them.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, I remember giving somebody a book, my book, to read, and she brought it home. And a few weeks later, I asked her, had she tipped into the book at all? And she said, actually, no, I haven't. She said, actually, I gave it to my husband. He's reading it.
Oh,
And after, I tell you, she taught me a lesson, because I made sure afterwards, do not mention this word to your partner. Why? Because they'll look it up, and then they'll turn that on you. Then anything you say, they'll tell you you're the narcissist. And they absolutely will. And they'll turn their behaviors right back on you. And they're quite good at that. They'll pick up the words. They're very good at picking up information quickly. It doesn't go very deep with them, but they'd be able to sort of say, I think you're projecting that onto me now. I think that's your stuff. So don't tell, when you're in therapy, don't mention the word narcissism. Don't turn around and say, I think you're a narcissist. Don't do that. You're giving them clues. Just observe, sit and observe, and work through the behaviors with your therapist so that you can actually get confirmation. Sometimes you might be seeing things that are not there, and your therapist can put that right too. That maybe that you're exaggerating things. That maybe he wasn't getting at you on that particular occasion, but maybe something else was going on that the therapist will pick up. So my advice would be, if you're in that situation, learn as much as you can, go to your therapy, bring whatever's going on in, because together you can unpack it and learn more about you and about them, how you respond and what is the effect that it has on them. Because if you're giving them supply, they're enjoying that. They want more of that. And they want to see you cry. When they see you cry, then they're content. They'll often walk away then at that point. So definitely research it, sit with it, and get to know this person, because this person is not the one you fell in love with. That's only an illusion if they are a narcissist.
unpacking that while you're still in the relationship is painful
It is painful.
because you're going through a grieving process while you're still in the actual relationship.
And it takes a person has to hear things many times before it really goes in as well. So even if I explain something to somebody that, okay, this is what I think might have been happening in the relationship. How does that feel? Does that feel right? Or can you see something else in it yourself? And we unpack it pretty well. I also know today they may not have it. We might revisit this again in a little while. It might come in the room in a different guise, but that's when I'll be able to say, do you remember that occasion at the table? This is more of that. It's looking different. And they'd be, is it? Let's look at it. Let's unpack it. And that's how victims get to know. And of course, I encourage them to go and read other people's work. Always. Don't rely on just me and my work and my knowledge. Read everybody's, because they might give you information in a way that resonates with you even better than I do.
Feel like that stage that you get into where you're just reading everything, it is a vital necessary stage. You can't get to other stages without going through that stage. You just don't want to be stuck there forever, but you definitely have to dive in. And I feel like that is part of the deprogramming that's the beginning of when you start taking your power away from them and with yourself, and you're doing your own deprogramming of what it's like to be in this cult, even if it's just a cult of one person.
Yes.
That's what it feels like to me. So when I would do interviews with people that are, cult deprogramming experts, I would hear a lot of the things that you had said or we had emailed about while I'm listening to this expert talk about the tactics that they use to help deprogram someone. And it's
Yeah, absolutely absolutely is cultish behavior, absolutely. And you can be a cult of just one, absolutely. Um, they'll have their own way of doing things. They have to be the master or the guru of the home. It'll be their rules and their rules only. And anybody who disagrees with their rules, they will tell you, oh, that's because I'm so powerful. They don't like me. Like if for instance the wife's family are saying, I think he's controlling you. And of course, in a little tiff, she say, "My mother thinks that you're trying to control me too much," and then he'll come back and say, "Yeah, of course she does. She's jealous of our relationship because you and I get on so well. Because you don't see her nearly as often as you used to. She's jealous." And of course, it's true that you may not be seeing your family as often as you used to because you're being isolated. You're realizing that every time you do see your family, you end up having a row with your partner. And so you start, tempering that. You don't see them quite so often to avoid the rows. But yeah, so they do act like a cult leader, absolutely.
winding yourself out of that. That's where I think for me, it felt like terror. And a couple of times with a couple of people that were very dangerous, physically dangerous, had maimed other people. I was right to be physically terrified. But mostly for me, it's psychological, just like, and it's more of how, when I unpack it later, it was more of how what do I need to work on within myself that I went down this road with this person and allowed this to go on for like not to shame myself, but I did plenty of that too, but more just, okay, there are some holes in me, some wounds that are just hanging out for everybody to see, and I'm walking around with them, and I am blind to this, and I better open my eyes and start plugging in those holes myself with love and knowledge and blah blah blah. Otherwise, the next one that wafts in is going to go, find those and dig them out and do their best with my wounds.
But Kristen, when you get to that place where you're wondering, well, what could I be doing? You're pretty far along.
Right, right.
Really, you actually are very far along when you're doing that, because in the beginning they're just so trying to protect themselves. They're not even able to go. Yes, they might be thinking, oh, I'm stupid. Why did I say that? Or why did I do that? But they're not actually looking deeper in to see, could there be something I'm doing that I could change? And so when I introduce that piece into the therapy room, I've got to be very careful how I do that too, because they're already full of
Right.
shame. And I have to be careful not to add to that as well. But this is where the ghost in the machine is useful as a metaphor, because even if we take Jane's story of at the table, if I were using the ghost in the machine metaphor there, I'd say, let's look and see, looking through those lenses, what was going on for him. And then let's look or in the kitchen when he attacked you, what was going on? He was feeling shamed. He was feeling that his boss was thinking he wasn't as clever. How did he manage to bag himself such a clever wife? His boss probably wasn't even thinking that at all, but he's thinking that. So his ego is bruised. And so he has to now, that's the ghost. The ghost, let's say the ghost is the how you think, how you feel, your ego. So his ghost at that time was feeling it needed to protect itself. So then it's the job of his machine, that's the behavior and the actions, to come and rescue the ghost. So he turns on her. What do you think? What were you trying to do, embarrassing me like that? How dare you? And then what's going in her? She's suddenly, everything had been wonderful, and all of a sudden, the floor is going from under her. She's afraid he's going to turn. She can see he's angry, very angry. She doesn't know if he's going to get violent, vicious with her. She doesn't know. So her ghost is feeling unsafe. And what does her machine do? Her machine jumps into protecting her by saying, plumossing. What did I do? Oh God, I'm so sorry. I never meant to do that. We were just talking. We were just talking about books. That was all. Yeah, but you were trying to show me up that because I never read a book. We did no, we didn't. We weren't talking about that. I was just talking about the book. And actually he had read the book. Oh, so now you want to talk to somebody who's intelligent like yourself? So I'm not good enough anymore because I haven't read the book? And she, no matter what she says, she can't get it right. So you see how the ghost and the machine is working in both of them. And now they're disconnected. Both of them are disconnected. And both of them are feeling unsafe. So I might unpack that in the therapy room. Maybe not in that particular way, but I would unpack it and see, right, look what's going on in him. Understand it. You don't have to fix it. You just need to understand what's going on. But now let's look at you. Let's spend a little time looking at you. Let's look and see, could you have done something different? What could you have done different? So what I'm doing is I'm bringing her awareness to what she's doing that actually might be adding to it. Because if you play into if you give them narcissistic supply in the way she was, they're going to repeat it and repeat it because they're getting something from it.
Oh, so you're talking about you go in then and you try to teach them how they could have responded differently in order to not give the narcissist as much supply the next time, so
Yeah,
that you're doing your own intermittent reinforcement. Is that what you mean?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh.
So I might put it to her, what do you think? Very often they can't think. They actually can't think. And I said, well, shall I offer you something? Shall we look at something, maybe something I might see? And always I'm offering because I'm feeling out the ground. How much is she able for tonight? I can always bring this up at another session. But
Mm.
tonight, how is she able to, how far is she able to go in this? Um, but then I'll be sort of saying, well, I wonder what might have happened if actually you'd walked into the dining room and just started collecting up the glasses. If you had refused to engage in it at all, what do you think might have happened? Now, she might tell me that, well, that's not the way to go as well. Actually, he'd have followed me and he'd have done, and that would have made him even angrier. I say, okay, well, then that's not obviously then the right way to, let's look at something else or something else. So we'd be looking at alternatives. But I'd be telling her also, look, you're not acting on anything. You're not doing anything. We're just learning. You're just learning. You're learning about yourself and you're learning about him. And you're learning what he needs, what he's trying to get from you, and what you're trying to get from him. And I wonder if you didn't need that from him, if you just didn't need that from him, how might it be?
Hmm. Interesting. I'm thinking about relationships I've seen that do that, and I always think, my God, the amount of time that you spend managing your mate.
Yeah,
It's you're not really a partner. You're managing their behavior for them, and they're behaving deplorably. I
yeah.
mean, and isn't that exhausting? And
Absolutely. And when you understand the ghost in the machine a little bit more, and hopefully in my book, I try to give examples of everything that I'm talking about, so as people will get an idea of it. When you understand it, you'd be able to look at this couple that you're talking about now, and you'd be able to see what's happened to him, his ghost and his machine, and you'd be able to see what's happening her ghost and her machine. And that's very telling. That can tell you sometimes, leave it to them. Leave it to them.
yeah, it's interesting because I've maintained friendships with people that are still in not a horrible relationship at all, but there's some definite psychological abuse going there. I mean, not to say that that isn't horrible. I just said
Mm.
that completely awful. But anyway, they're in a relationship. It's not healthy. they're not going to, there's too much that they value, money and whatever it
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
that they're not going to leave that relationship.
Mm.
But I can see them sort of leveling, getting to a place as their esteem gets in a better place where they're not tolerating the behavior as much. And it actually
Yeah,
makes for a better
yeah,
relationship for them. And there's something to be, to be said for that. And some
yeah.
relationships, you can't even do that.
I think timing is very important. It's all about timing. When people come to the therapy room, they're usually ready to look at some, but you've got to go gently with some. You can fire away and run with others, but the fact of the timing that they've come, then you're able to help them. And it's the same with our friendships. Um, Timing is important. There's a time that you can tell they're just not ready. They're just not ready. You can see it clearly what's going on. And if you say to her, he's controlling you, you ought to, you should leave him. She's going to feel pushed into the place of defending him because she doesn't want to make that decision yet anyway. She's not ready. And so she'll defend him. Oh, he's not, maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it's not that bad, really. I'm painting him in a bad light to you. Um, and so they tried to take some of it back. But timing, one day, maybe when one of them are able to open up to you, you'll be ready. You'll have answers and they'll be ready to hear the answers. So timing is important.
That is a good segue to the timing of us doing these shows. They're fun. We
They
get to
are.
connect and
We
spend time
do.
together. I get to look at your face. It's fantastic. And right now, let's see, it is April 4th, 2025. I'm in America, you're in Ireland, and I'm not going to go into, everybody knows what's happening at this time, but I would say I'm noticing differences in my own friendships and other relationships with people. And I'm in a pretty good place in terms of I catch it right away. When somebody comes in and they've got too many qualities that are big red flags, boom, immediately I'm out. And that's taken so much work to get here. But here's what I notice: the stress that people are under right now is causing its own kind of friction. And some people can move into behaving into ways that they've thought they worked all out in therapy, but they are so stressed and so scared and so terrorized in their own life
Yeah.
that they are maybe dipping back to some behavior that is shocking to you because you thought you worked that out 10 years ago with them. So I would just say it's important to move out of these relationships. It's important to get the therapy that you need to move out of these relationships. And it's also important to remember, maybe not with your partner as much, but with people in the periphery right now, that grace grace to people during this time.
Yeah, it's a very difficult time worldwide, but especially for you all in America. You need to mind yourselves as best you can because you know, you're experiencing this intermittent reinforcement daily right now, coming from the top in your leadership. Um, you're being given drops of poison daily, and then you're given the odd little crumb of hope. So you need to mind yourselves, surround yourself with soft people if you're able to,
Yeah.
because it's a very harsh time, very fearful time. And that's not always going to be easy because people are very revved up at the moment with all that's happening. And don't forget, not only is it happening from your leaders, some people are living with that in their home on top of
Right.
it all as well. So it's a particularly difficult time. So be kind, please be kind to yourselves. It's really important. Be gentle. Have compassion for yourselves. You're quite helpless. There's not a lot you can do right now. It's not that you have you're acting paralyzed. You are paralyzed at the moment. There's not a lot you can do right now, but all you can do is stay hopeful
And
that
study.
it'll burn itself out at some point, that the people are getting organized together, and there'll be more hope coming down the line. But
And study the heck out of what we're talking about. Read these books and choose
mm,
to put them not only into perspective of your own life and your
yeah,
own one-to-one relationships with
mhm,
people, so neighbors, family,
yeah,
spouse, whoever,
mhm,
and then open it up to a wider perspective of world leadership,
yes,
of other countries, of your own
yes,
local government, whatever that is.
mhm,
Apply this to those situations and just see
mhm,
what might resonate, because it helps you to, you're in this bubble, you're isolated, because that's what this relationship does. If it's
mhm,
if it's a spouse, for example, you're so isolated, you only, like, your world becomes, maybe your world was here when you met them, and then by the time you're in it, your world has become like this. And applying, Christine, your books to things bigger than just your relationship at a certain point does actually help you open that world up again. Okay, it's scary to
yeah,
see
it
out there.
definitely does. It definitely does, because I'm not just teaching this stuff. I try to live it myself as well. So I try to put, myself in the shoes of your leaders to see where their ghost and their machine is. It gives me a little bit of insight, and it gives me a little bit of tolerance. I'm not asking anybody to be tolerant. I'm saying that's how it affects me. It gives me a little bit of tolerance. It gives me a little bit of, when I can understand what's going on, I can actually handle it all much calmer myself.
Right. Knowledge is powerful,
Yes, knowledge is power.
and hope springs from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, everyone, where you can go to read Christine's books and to download them, there's only one place you can go to get these incredible books. You go to narcissisticbehavior.net. You can see all of her books. This new one, Goes to the Machine, excellent. And we will continue to do these shows. But I would say this, if you have questions, or you want to us to share, a specific topic, these are on Christine's YouTube channel, the video and audio of these. I'm airing these as audio only on my podcast, but the videos are over on Christine's YouTube. You can go into YouTube and type in Christine Louis de Cannonville, and there you go. Write in the comments. We will be blocking anything that's rude, as happens, but if, you know, put comments in there. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about. And if there are chapters that really stood out for you and you want to just have us examine them more thoroughly, tell us. We absolutely will look at those and plan our future shows on these topics accordingly. So,
Mm.
Christine, I leave the last bit for you.
I think that would be really good. I think we hadn't discussed it, but I think it would be, so I'm talking off the top of my head, really. I think it would be great if we did a kind of a questions and answers. If I can answer, I will. I might not always be able to answer, but we can do our best. I think that would be very good. But also to know that any examples I give, I actually always give you true, real, live examples of people that I've worked with. I'm not just picking them out of a book or anything like that. So yeah, it sounds like a good idea.
Okay, everyone. Sorry I threw that on you, Christine. It came to
That's
me
okay.
it wasn't planned, but
That's
thought
no,
that would be
that's
good. And before my dog goes crazy, I'm going to sign off because I hear a mail carrier. I'm going to sign off
okay.
for now. Thank you, Christine. And
Thank you, everybody.
yes,
Thank you.
then watchers, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next show.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
one thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristen Sananta Walker, and thank you for listening.
And I can write the low, low, lows with me. I can write the low, low, lows with me. Till my vision clears up perfectly. I can write the low, low, lows with me.
Good boy.